I am now here in the studio up here in Umeå. And with me this afternoon, I have some guests. And also behind the screen here, as we here in Umeå can see, we have a lot of participants. We have locally elected leaders and governmental officials out in 7 countries and 22 municipalities. Leaders and officials who also supports the vision of achieving gender equality for all. Participants come from Botswana, Kenya, Moldova, Tanzania, Uganda, Ukraine, and Zambia. And I will now introduce to all our participants, the guests here in Umeå, or actually I am a guest here in Umeå. So with us here, we have Linda Gustafsson. Linda is a gender strategist at Umeå municipality. And we have Janet Ågren. Janet is a councillor at Umeå municipality, but also chairman of the Municipal Board Planning Committee. And we have Anna Ivarsson. Anna is also a gender strategist at the County Administrative Board in Västerbotten. And over at the far end, we have Ola Svensson. Ola is an expert in diversity issues at the Swedish Sports Confederation up here in Västerbotten. And we will very soon talk more to these gender champions. But I will explain why we are up here in Umeå for this afternoon. We are here because Umeå is one of Sweden's most successful municipalities in terms of strategic and long-term gender equality work, and that has yielded results. Umeå has worked for over 30 years with gender equality and gender mainstreaming. And Umeå is a Swedish cutting-edge example to show you as participating countries during our training and during this Swedish phase. And we will very soon return and talk a lot more to all of you about both success and challenges that you have encountered over many years in different areas. But we will actually start with watching a film together. And this is a film that Umeå municipality and we at ICLD have produced together to in some way replace a physical study visit, a study visit that we would very much have liked to conduct if it was possible for us, for all of us together to be here during the Swedish phase, as you know. And if we could have visited Umeå up here together and met all of you in person, then we would have taken part in the Gendered Landscape bus tour. And that is really something to experience. That is the way Umeå has chosen to show and manifest many of the different investments in gender equality work and gender mainstreaming that Umeå has conducted over the past few years. It shows how the gender mainstreaming and gender equality work in the daily life is expressed in the city's landscape, architecture, labor market, physical environment, and everyday life for women and men and girls and boys up here in Umeå. But now we will all together watch this film. It's about 5-6 minutes long. So follow along on the journey in the gendered landscape.
For more than 30 years, Umeå has strived for a city that creates conditions for women and men to have equal power to shape society as well as their own lives. Gendered landscape is a way to remind us of what we have achieved, but equally important, the journey we have left. It's a method that we use when we think, plan and build our city, from the political level to the everyday work of the public services. It's about integrating an understanding of gendered power structures and the life conditions of women and men in all the work that the municipality does. Here, for instance, this used to be a dark and gloomy tunnel, unsafe in many ways, especially for women. The new passage, it's broader, it's lighter, you can see from one side to the other, all the corners are rounded, there's no space to hide behind, and if you feel unsafe, there's an exit in the middle. But most important, the tunnel is covered in the artwork Live and the constant company of author Sara Lidman and her words. We are social beings, and especially for women, the company of another woman makes us feel safe, even though it's not an actual physical woman. In the process, we also worked with raising awareness and knowledge on men's violence to women in public space and what that does to us. Women are not afraid of places, they're mainly afraid of men. And highlighting that and combating that is a work that can never stop. The design of this bus stop has been from a sustainability and a gender equality perspective. This is an area where a lot of women and men work, and we wanted to change the perspectives on mobility by making it innovative, attractive and safe for both women and men. The first idea was to build a box where heating would be available in the winter time, but we didn't go with that idea because we thought it might make women feel unsafe and trapped. So instead it became this design, which gives you personal space and shelters you from wind without the sense of being cornered. Behind us, we see the first preschool in Umeå with a focus on gender equality. A growing number of preschools in Umeå are working with gender equality and challenging norms as part of their everyday work. At young ages, we form our opinions on what women and men can or can't, should or shouldn't be, and an active work in preschools with combating those stereotypes and challenging traditional gender norms is really, really important.
Gendered landscapes is a method that helps to illustrate when policies are put into practice. It shows the examples of what has been done with the successful projects and landmarks, but it also raises questions about the work that needs to be done. With a non-critical perspective, it helps us to ask questions of who we are planning the city for. It's a method that raises awareness and can help us to ask questions that can be both provocative and stimulating.
In Umeå, we are lucky to have politicians that have the gender on the agenda. If we manage the gender question well, the city will be more attractive for companies and for people to move here. But it's also important for the people that already live here, because a good policy about gender will make the people more happy, and that's our goal.
With Free Zone, we challenged our methods for citizen dialogue. We worked with inclusion through exclusion, choosing to only have dialogue with young women. We had creative workshops that ended up in an art exhibition on the dual expectations that young women feel in their life. It also ended up being a new space. But we can't create a place that's free from expectations. But we can create a space where young women feel like they have the right to be, where they can hang out alone or with friends in swings designed for someone who's 160 centimeters long, listen to music through the speakers in the roof, and hopefully feel like the city belongs to them. There are many places and stories in the gendered landscape that inspires us to move forward. These were just a few. It's not that we are there yet, but Umeå has taken really important steps to make equality a reality for all.
Thank you for showing us the gendered landscape, Linda and Janet. in the physical bus tour, there are more than 24 stops to show landmarks in Umeå. If each and one of you would get to mention yet another of these 24 landmarks, what would that be? If you were to start, Ola, could you mention ones?
Yes, my pick would be Umeå Energy Arena, the home arena of Umeå IK, a two-time winner of the UEFA Women's Champions League. This is the place for equal practice slots. Umeå was one of the first, probably the first, I would say, let's say that, the first municipality in Sweden with equal practice slots.
That is something. And if you would pick one, Anna?
Yeah, one of the stops is actually where I work, the County Administrative Board, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. So I guess I have to say the Women's History Museum. It's actually the first Women's History Museum in Sweden. Was created in 2014, I think. And it was actually women has always been present in history, but it hasn't been illuminated. So this was a way of doing that.
That is also quite a landmark. And Janet?
Yeah, one of the examples that comes to my mind is a new city district that we're planning that's called the Island. So it's an entire new city districts with more than 2,800 units of buildings. So that will be very important. And we are not only trying to develop our existing city districts. So this is a new one. And there we are really trying to push the agenda when it comes to planning. So I think that's a good example that you have to push the existings and the coming. So there you really put focus on the green perspective, but also the social perspective, and thus including gender equality. So I think that's a good one.
Thank you. And I think, Linda, since you got to show us all these ones, we skip you with showing more landmarks. So let's say a little bit more about why Umeå is so unique when it comes to gender equality work. And actually, as I understand it, Umeå is still kind of unique in Sweden when it comes to gender mainstreaming. And that comes because you have actually had a gender committee since 1980. And as I understand it, you are still one of the few municipalities in Sweden with that solid political infrastructure. And in the first part of this studio conversation, I would like to focus now a little bit more on you, Linda and Janet, with some more questions on your solid and long time gender equality work. So what are you most proud of when it comes to putting Umeå on the gender equality map? If you were to start on that, Linda, what would you emphasize?
I would emphasize that Umeå is a municipality that continues to evolve and keep having high ambitions on the work with gender equality. Keep trying to push the agenda on how to work with gender mainstreaming and never really resting from it, but just that it's been an ongoing work for such a long time. And of course, I'm proud also of the infrastructure when it comes to working with gender equality that's in place. But I think mostly being a civil servant and working for the municipality, I think just the high ambitions and the possibilities that gives for more of a, than, as you say, cutting edge work with gender equality.
And what have the preconditions been then for such a long work, for the possibilities?
Well, as you said, Umeå has had in the beginning, I think it was called a gender equality working group that consisted of politicians. And I think that it was I think it was 1978 that the first one was formed, and then from 1994 there has been a gender equality committee with politicians from the city council. There has for a very long time been an overall goal from the city council to on gender equality, and gender equality is also something that is followed up through like the normal structure of the municipality as any other goal for the municipality, and also that there have been civil servants with a specific responsibility to work with gender equality and to work with the gender equality committee, which has also been in place since there has been civil servants in the municipality working with gender and gender mainstreaming since 1989.
Thank you. Janet, so what are you most proud of? You are a politician. What are you most proud of when it comes to Umeå's consistent work and strives?
Well, I think it's just that I'm so proud of. It's been so long time work, and it's been consistent, and as you said, we've had it on the agenda for more than 30 years. So of course I'm proud of that, but also that it has a strong support from the politicians, and that from both female and male politicians in the city council. And I'm also proud of the work we're doing when it comes to urban planning and gender equality, and especially as chair of the planning committee. And I think that's something we are going to emphasize further. So in short, yes, a long history.
Thank you. I guess that during such a long time, at some point, also the strivings and the gender equality work might have gone wrong or taking a wrong turn. Are there something that you care to mention that when at some point it took a wrong turn or went wrong? Maybe I can address that to both of you.
Well, I can start and then Linda you can continue. I can't really come up with a good example at the top of my mind, but I think when we're talking about gender equality, it's a very complex work, and you have to remember that the most important thing is to have it on the agenda. And if we have that, you also become aware of it's not a quick fix, because you have to understand that not every project is going to succeed. So, and that's not important that all we do succeed. It is that we learn from our mistakes. So when we do a mistake, we try again and we try to do better. So be persistent, keep going.
Do you want to fill in something?
I just agree with that. And then as Janet said, it could be if something doesn't succeed, an idea or a project. It could also be the timing, that the timing isn't right, and in a year or 2 years, the timing, something has changed, and the timing is right. So the persistent work and not giving up, and learning from the mistake. Maybe it needs more anchoring. Maybe the timing was wrong or something, but just keep trying and adjusting the work a little bit and try again.
So then that leads us on to key factors for success. Then sometimes it's you just need to have the right timing. So what are the timings, the good timing now for consistent gender equality work? What are the key factors for sustainable gender equality work right now?
Well, I think if I start, I think that, as we talked about, like having the infrastructure in place in some way, some sort of infrastructure for the work is important. But then in my years as working as a civil servant and supporting different departments in their work with gender equality, I think it's so crucial, it's so important for sustainable gender mainstreaming work that it becomes understandable for the department in the municipalities that's going to work with it. So that also means when you work with implementing, work with gender mainstreaming, you have to have an understanding of what other departments do. Like because you have to, if you work in the
social services, or you work with building and planning, or you work with education, have to have a knowledge about, as also the person who is going to support the work, have a knowledge about what is it that they do and how can gender equality be part of the development work? How can it be part of maybe solving problems that they have already seen, but they haven't really interpreted them as a gender equality issue. But then so it's very much about, I think, making it understandable and manageable for that department to make it, because if you don't understand why you're going to do something, then it's never going to be sustainable. You have to find that understanding and just coming to that conclusion that you understand, okay, so this is why we're going to do the gender equality work. So that it doesn't become just this is something we have to do.
Sounds like a really holistic approach, getting everyone to understand why. Do you want to add something, Janet?
No, I think Linda addressed it well, but as you said, the holistic approach is important for us. And when we're talking about gender equality, it's part of our work when it comes to social sustainability. So I think the broad perspective is important, and also when it comes to the SDGs, and when we're talking about that, I think the broad perspective is important, and then we are using our work with gender equality in other areas as well. So
yeah, and you mentioned the SDGs and that is something that I wonder, because you started over 30 years, and how have you integrated your gender equality work with the global agenda and the SDG number 5? Can you say something about that? Has that been, I mean, that must have been something working in your advantage, getting gender goal number 5 to help you with your work?
Yeah, as Linda said, we've had an overall goal from the City Council for a long time, and as she said, we are following up on that goal in all our departments and how they're working with it. And then when it comes to the SDGs, they also emphasize the work or the importance of gender equality. So that puts an extra push on the importance of the work with gender equality. So our local work can be with support of the SDGs. So I think there is a good connection between the SDGs and our local work. So we're happy about the connection.
And I know that you also, it's easy for you to put on the gender lens when you look at all the sustainable development goals, and that you can see something when you do that. You mentioned that to me earlier when you put on your gender lens glasses.
Yes, absolutely. Because when it comes to our work with the SDGs, and now when it comes to the climate change, our city administration has done very interesting studies for us. There's one study when it comes to consumer habits and also a travel habit survey. And when we get the data, we can see some differences when it comes to female-male behavior. And often we see that women are more likely to do behavioral changes, and they behave more climate neutral. So for instance, if more male were to do the same changes or choices, I would say, as men in Umeå, we would reach many of our goals when it comes to becoming climate neutral. For instance, when it comes to making the right choices when traveling in the city center.
Yeah, and commuting. Yeah, thank you. I was thinking of one last question when we move on and talk a little bit to Anna and Ola. Talking about resistance, there is always resistance when it comes to gender equality work. Has the resistance in Umeå been active or passive? Of course, it's been resistance, but has it been active or passive, or how has it changed during these decades that you have been working with gender mainstreaming?
I think that the resistance changes, as you say. I would say that it's also different in different aspects of the gender equality question. But I would say that maybe the resistance has become more passive, meaning that it's not an active resistance, it's not protesting so much, even though that also does occur. It's more about maybe not making the time or putting it a bit lower down on the agenda or things like that. But of course, there's resistance. But I would also like to point out that I think that there is a lot of support from the inhabitants of Umeå that gender equality is an important question. That of course helps also with the gender equality work.
Most citizens, inhabitants in Umeå like that Umeå has put gender equality on the map.
I think we'll say that, yes.
Yeah.
Let's say that. Let's say that. Yeah.
Okay, now let's move over to you, Anna Ivarsson. You are a gender strategist at the County Administrative Board in Västerbotten, and you work on gender equality in the region and in other municipalities. There are another big municipality, a city like Umeå, and then there are a few smaller municipalities and rural areas. And these are circumstances that our participating teams can relate to, that there are smaller rural areas. And of course, the circumstances varies if it's bigger municipalities and smaller areas. And you work at the administrative level, where you have the responsibility to support these areas, where the distance to both support and prevention is an obstacle both for women and for men. Can you tell us a little bit more about this prevention work?
Yes, absolutely. So at the administrative level, we work with gender mainstreaming the national gender political goals in all these municipalities, work a lot together with Linda as well. And one of the government's mission is to combat men's violence against women. And this is where most of our prevention work take place. And the government says that this kind of violence should be prevented by focusing on harmful gender norms and harmful gender norms, especially connected to harmful masculinity as well. And that we have to involve men and boys in this prevention work. So this is what we do. And we do this by supporting local authorities as well, organizations and municipalities in their work with gender mainstreaming. And we do this by arranging networks and educations. We have partnerships and projects, as well as supporting specific methods with aims to address men's violence within many different fields, both in the workplaces, but also together with Ola in sports management as well. And also in schools and so on. So that's how we work.
A wide range.
Yeah.
Are there any particular good examples to learn from that you would like to share with us and with the participants?
Yeah, I can think about one where we have worked actually with 4 rural municipalities to try out a model of what we call a whole municipal approach, where politicians and municipal leaders have worked together with the local police, strategists, the schools, social services, the civil society, and other, with the sort of a process model for education, but also for mapping and implementing ways to work to prevent gender-based violence and men's violence in all different areas of the municipality organizations. And this model is based on the notion that it is not just a question for the schools and the social services to prevent violence. It's a question for the whole municipal organization. And in these rural municipalities, the municipal organization itself is usually the biggest employer as well. So to prevent violence, we need to work within and through this organization to prevent violence on all levels. And since we started, we have evaluated this work as well to some extent. And they say that the cooperation between the municipality and the local police authority has grown a bit stronger. There are more gender policies in place that covers the whole municipal organization, not just the school, for example. And they have started to implement actual methods to prevent violence in different sectors as well. So it's really great to be able to work with that.
Interesting. Another area that you are working with, and then that I know is of interest to our participants, is that you work with the forest industry, a large sector and a male-dominated one that I think that our participants could relate to other male-dominated areas in their countries. And I know that you have a long-term and a good collaboration, and it's a successful one, working on gender equality issues with the forest industry. Maybe you could share some of those.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been going on for a really long time. Actually, I think Linda has been involved to some extent as well in that work. But during many years, the county administrative board and the Swedish Forest Agency and many of the county's businesses and partners to the businesses have worked together to actively change structures and perceptions that affects women and men's possibility both to own the forest, which you can do, and work and visit the forest as well. And in practice, this means to analyze how factors such as gender and power influence how we perceive what a forest worker is, how it affects how we work and how we treat each other in the workplace as well. And this work actually started with aiming for a less gender segregated labor market and to provide the labor market with more workers. You have a lot of women that wants to work in the forest, and that goal is still relevant today, but it has come to focus more on the work culture, which is essential not only to get women into the business, but to keep them and to ensure forest industry and the workplace environment to thrive and be safe in. And we've actually worked a lot through the management and with researchers, but we have also seen again the participation of men and boys within the forest industry and offered them separate networks to discuss workplace jargon connected to masculinity and sexual harassment, and they have participated in conferences with focus on harmful masculinity and so on.
Thank you, Anna. I think we'll come back to those questions. And talking about harmful masculinity and the importance of engaging men in gender work, I think that is a perfect bridge over to you, Ola Svensson. You're an expert in diversity issues at the Swedish Sports Confederation. And I think that you are in this room in a double sense today, since you represent the important aspect of engaging men in equality work. I know that the Sports Confederation, especially here in Västerbotten, have been working very actively over the last few years with engaging more men and boys in gender equality and making equality in sports a prerequisite for successful sports development. Even in sports, you see this as a question of democracy, actually, you told me at the bottom line. Could you tell us more how you see on this?
Yep. And let me start by saying that sport is the largest popular movement in Sweden. The movement consists of non-profit and non-governmental sport organizations. And with 3.3 million members, we have an incredible opportunity to make an impression and make a difference for people, I would say. And in sports, we consider equal sports as a prerequisite for successful sports development. It doesn't benefit democracy, justice, efficiency, and development to reward one group over another, for sure. And both research and people's individual experiences suggests that gender equality promotes development for both organizations and individuals. But neither society nor sport is totally equal. The sports movement was started by men, for men, and is still characterized by male norms and structures that excludes. And this means that we must work from the societal perspective and from our own history with a view to the future and how we want it to be. And now to the main point, it is important that more men get involved in gender equality work. And one way to do that is to offer to be a part of the solution instead of the opposite. It is easier to be a co-power in this way. get more men to use the platform, to take a stand and show it.
And in your work, you told me that you focus on working with attitudes and norms, and that you do it in various ways when you approach children and teenagers in your activities. Yes. And when you engage in adults. Could you tell us a little bit more on how these activities, always connected to sports somehow, but how could it look like?
Yep. And also here I have to start with our main focus right now is exactly that, changing norms in sports. In the past, we, like society at large, have rather invested in educating, developing and strengthening girls and women. And that has been good, of course. Women have become stronger and more competent based on various educational initiatives. But there has been no real change in norms, structures or power and influence. For example, the boardrooms have still been closed. By addressing male norms in sports and getting more men to take responsibility for gender equality, we believe that we can make a real difference. And we work with a number of different educational concepts, tools and materials for both younger boys who practice sports, for coaches who are role models, and for boards that are responsible for the strategic management of the sports clubs. For example, there are theme lectures for the coaches and for the board members. We have education for equal communication. We have conversation material for the youngest, for the boys in the locker room, the jargon. We address that, the male norms. We address sexism, racism, homophobia, and we do it both for the younger and for the a little bit older boys. And for sure, the board members, they also need education in this and address the male norms.
Thank you, Ola. And thank you, all of you,